Welcome to House Rule, a podcast and now vlogcast, videocast, I don't know what you call it, about role-playing. This is episode 22 of our illustrious gathering, and today we'll be talking to you about a experiment we ran recently, our first collective real experience with Fate involving game creation and character creation, and an announcement about Free RPG Day, which is when? It's not today, right? The 15th.
Saturday.
That is Saturday. So that'll be really fun for people who like free RPGs. You can go down to probably just about any local game store and probably pick up some, maybe swag, depending on the size of it, or modules, maybe try out something you haven't tried before with people you've never met, maybe meet a group if you need one.
Yeah, we did that a few years ago. It was pretty fun.
Yeah, we got the Death Watch thing. I ran a little bit of that. That was a pretty awesome experiment, all things considered, that we never really followed up on properly.
They had also the Pathfinder Advanced Player's Guide that we looked at too, I believe, because they had all the new characters in it.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah.
I just like hearing the word swag.
They also had, what else? They had Exalted. Oh, geez, I don't remember.
Would you like some of what is this year, perhaps, going to be there?
Sure, I'm sure you know better than the rest of us do.
So, Paizo is doing a follow-up of their Weeby Goblins called Weeby Goblins 2. So it's a short module designed where you are actually playing the goblins. There's quick start rules for BattleTech and Shadowrun from Catalyst Games. There's some interesting dice. Chessex is sponsoring some dice for it. Edge of the Empire from Fantasy Flight Games, and a number of other Pathfinder-compatible games as well are also being released.
So the dice are actually free?
I believe so. Q Workshop and Chessex, I believe, both have some themed dice that, in limited quantities, will be free.
Shit.
You get down there quick?
Hey, that reminds me of... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I know a lot of people on the internet who, on RPGNet and on Reddit RPG, who said that their kids really liked Weeby Goblins as like a starter thing for younger people. So, assuming you wanted to expose them to the actual unwashed masses, might not be terrible.
In the past, Paizo has always released their free one as a PDF a few weeks later as free as well. So there's a decent chance they'll do that again with their Weeby Goblins too.
I also think that that one is a lead-in to one of their other modules as well.
Yeah, the Goblin one was a lead-in to...
Was it the Jade one?
The Jade Empire? That sounds right.
Yeah, I don't know.
I do remember hearing about that, although I never did it.
There were certainly fireworks in it.
I do like fireworks, and who doesn't really?
I've read through that first one that you can, the PDF. It's
Well,
actually
just ruin it for yourself.
No, I was gonna run it.
I think there's also Star Wars this year, but I don't know exactly what it was.
Edge of the Empire.
Oh, did you say
I
that
assumed
already?
Edge of the Empire was for Warhammer.
No, that's
You said
Star Wars.
Fantasy Flight.
That's Fantasy Flight Star Wars. It uses a similar system to the Death Watch mechanics, I believe.
Yeah.
Sure.
But it's their Star Wars mechanics. It's a fairly recent thing that they have done that I actually know almost nothing about.
I saw Joe wrote something about it.
Books that probably are super duper pretty and also expensive.
Yep, they were. The beta cost money to get into, I believe.
Of course it did.
Which was pretty funny.
So if you're a Minecraft fan and willing to pay for a beta, then that would have been right up your alley. Yeah, the Fantasy Flight people have really gorgeous, really expensive books. So yeah. Anyway, this past weekend me personally, Lee, I ran a game of Fate, the first session of what I had titled the Steampunk Fate Experiment, with more players than recommended, and it was still pretty damn successful, I think. I ran with 6 players, none of which have had pure Fate experience. I think we've all had experience, except our friend Sean, who I guess had his first role-playing experience in probably quite a while. But the rest of us have had experience with Jeff's bastard role-playing games, the horrible spawn of White Wolf and Fate mixed together in some bizarre way.
Complete with claws
yeah.
and teeth.
That is true. Especially lately, more claws and teeth.
So we managed to not make the game into a space western. Just want to go on the record.
I was going to mention that it should have been a space western, but
No, it shouldn't have,
I
and I'm
got-
glad that it turned
I
out
got
the way it did.
overruled.
It seemed pretty close to being a space western.
Yeah.
It would not have been.
You know, we never really did flesh out what is going on in space, so for all we know, it is a space western.
Oh darn.
It could be. We
Yeah,
could
the
be
whole
on
city
an
is actually a
asteroid.
spaceship.
Although
It's
I
just
was
one big
really on board
spaceship.
with the space train idea that did not end up going.
Totally
going
different
through.
game.
Yeah, I was up for Galaxy Express also.
Yeah, instead we have
Toot, toot.
Steampunk Firefly train on Earth.
Oh yeah, and we picked like a really gritty setting because I mean we could have had a very lavish setting.
Yeah, we didn't end up with a really high, really stereotypical steampunk setting. We're not, everything doesn't take place in the sky, and everyone's not all super well dressed and everything. The characters are from like the dirty part of town, like the dirtiest part of town.
I think Jeff did this to us because when he put us in Detroit in the Mage game, I think we felt like we were like, oh, we should make this story and make it so that we have a lot of adversity, and I think we're just like hooked on that because I don't know, that's the way it was at the beginning of Jeff's game, and I'm pretty sure that we were.
What was it?
I think
It
we
was
were all
like,
on the same page.
Yeah, we should have a train, and someone's like, yeah, but maybe it's someone else's train, or we don't
Yeah,
want.
or maybe it's
We don't want the
busted.
train to
Yeah.
be good.
The train should be something that we have to struggle with all the time.
I remember specifically the route we took to get there was people wanted like someone, I think someone had just come out and said to be like, I want things to fly and I want like super science and stuff. And people are like, well, what if the flying stuff is pretty common, but there are also people who aren't there yet or who can't afford it. And then everyone's like, oh yeah, and then what if we're like criminals and we're on like the lower end of the scale technology wise? And then yeah, now they're part of the second class citizens who own a dingy train.
Yeah, and
And
this is kind of a follow-up episode for anyone who didn't listen to the last one. The idea behind this is that Lee came in saying, I kind of want to run a steampunk type Fate game, and then when we start talking about the world, he had us, I think the first thing he said is, what kind of game do you guys want to play? And we just sort of like went down, okay, we kind of want to play a lower concept game, local. Someone mentioned maybe be criminals, and it just kind of snowballed from there where he knew he wanted to run a steampunk game, but the players had like a real lot of input as to sort of world building even before we started fleshing out characters.
Well, and that's kind of an integral part of the design for Fate, so it was really neat to be able to design it collaboratively like that. And there was a lot of room for us as players to kind of power game it, and if we all would have like really wanted certain things to be going on, we probably could have done that, but man, we really put ourselves in a rut right off the bat, and I guess that's really easy for the GM to go along with because there's a lot of stuff he can do.
We're just power gaming the Fate points. We want everything to be crappy,
Yeah.
so we have points.
That's true.
Yeah, everyone's got massive overbearing problems. Except Ebo. I mean, Ebo's a merchant who doesn't really have that much money, so I guess that's kind of a problem.
All
That's a
I
big
wanted
problem if
was,
you're a merchant.
Isn't his trouble why is he even here?
That is true.
all I want is I just wanted space trains or trains, and I'm happy.
I just wanted to be a robot so bad. You guys have no idea. When he had mentioned that he wanted to do steampunk, I was like, oh, that would be so awesome. You can ask him. I was like sending him messages for like a couple weeks, like, and then I can do this, or what if I could do this? And I was just like, anything I could do to get the robot thing was...
Yeah, the robot thing ended up panning out. Also, when you had originally mentioned it to me, you had off the cuff mentioned Sexbot, and then that
Yeah,
became the thing.
I went full sex bot.
Oh,
Yeah, you
man.
are the Sexbot in the slums where you have no right to be.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean, there are Sexbots elsewhere where the rich people are.
Yeah,
but-
I have no idea how I got there. I mean, we can
No.
assume I'm from up top, maybe.
also, for someone not initiated to Fate, once you make your own character concept and like a short background, the next step is you sort of get integrated into other people's backgrounds. So 2 lucky souls got to integrate themselves into the Sexbot's background.
And
Yes,
the Sexbot
and-
got to forcefully insert himself into theirs. We drew a really colorful picture of Pat the Sexbot, which I won't bring
Yeah,
up
I don't
in
think we
case there
can
are people
illustrate
who.
that again.
Yeah, that's. I said colorful, but what I meant was filthy.
Yeah. Which is factually accurate, I'm sure.
Yeah. I think Rory is the only person who ended up with a character who has any real ties to the people, to the upper class citizens, which
What?
I enjoyed. Well, Evo kinda does, but not
Kinda
like,
do.
not specifically. Like Rory has like ties. He knows
Well-
people and shit.
Well, my past is literally up in the air.
That's true.
So we'll see what you do with it. I am really hoping that you make me do a lot of bad things to the group. But, you know, within reason.
Mostly while they're sleeping. Everyone just wakes up with stains on their pillows.
What? Why the pillows?
I don't
Because
know.
you'll
he's
see.
like a little puppy. He just pees
It'll
on all of your stuff. with his
Add to the
oil.
mystery.
He's just marking his territory. That's what a sexbot do.
God, there's oil everywhere.
No, I enjoyed it. I honestly, I was nervous before it started, and I think overall the process went pretty smoothly. People seemed to get into it more than, maybe not more than I expected, but people took to it pretty readily, I think.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it came up much, but I think you did a good job of sort of adjudicating, not arguments, but people wanting different things and stuff like that, and sort of offering up other options. And
Yeah,
keep
you
things
kind of
rolling.
kept this all into perspective for everybody, and like he said, just offering other options. That was really cool. And you would always, like, if there was something that wasn't figured out yet, you would make sure that that was the thing we needed to work on, you know, next, so we didn't forget about it. Or,
Yeah, and that's the
Something like that.
inherent problem with collaboration is everyone kind of has to agree, or at least live with a compromise or whatever. And
Yeah.
there's always
Sure.
that risk that you'll get the butting of heads and everyone will just be sort of like, all right, space western. Fuck it.
It definitely takes that shared world cooperation to an extreme, where you're writing it together and you're coming up with it together. And if people have very distinct ideas of what they want, those can be in conflict with each other quite quickly.
That is
Yeah.
true. Especially like writing your character into someone else's background. Like someone's background might be a horrible fit for writing your character into it, and that's kind of part of what makes the game interesting, but it does give that sort of sense of complete lack of privacy. What is yours is not really completely yours, that whole thing. Like it's
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
strange experience in that way. Like I'm
And
used to
this
having my
game-
character sheet, and that's my stuff, you know?
It's your
Yeah,
soul.
Yeah.
This game actually kind of thrives on everybody knowing how all the other characters in the group work, to really know how to push their buttons and make things happen in the story. And that's kind of I think that's one of the things that also makes it different, because like Jeff, any other game that I've played, my character sheet has for the most part been secret and personal, and now it's like all laid out in the open, and we're all sharing documents with each other so that we all have knowledge of dirty secrets and whatever.
Oh, yeah, you can all look at each other's documents. I'm enjoying that. I like the idea that you can all get in each other's grills, or if something is entertaining or has the potential to be entertaining and someone else hasn't realized it, you know, it's the opportunity for even in-game cooperative storytelling that I'm looking forward to that. I hope
It's a
that
way
people
to
don't
keep-
shy away from it.
It's a way to keep people in character too, because if, you know, somebody was doing something way out of line or whatever, and we all know that they have an aspect that's like, there's no way he would be doing that. We could always aspect check him or her or whoever, but yeah, it's pretty neat. You know, it keeps everybody in the role.
One thing I wanted to bring up and just sort of pose as a question, one of their big one of their big claims is that character creation is play. That always sounded so awesome to me, because like I've always wanted to have like super detailed characters, but it's like no one wants to blow 5 hours on making characters and never get to
We
play.
did.
So it's like, do you guys think that that really pulled through? That it felt really fun? It felt kind of more like playing than making characters, or not so much?
I do.
A little bit. I think we were all kind of new to it, so it was kind of, some people wanted to just write things down, some people wanted to go through them in their head, and I don't know, it ended up being a mishmash of feeling like you were part of an idea at times, and at times you're kind of on your own, writing your own stuff, doing your own thing.
Yeah, Ebo really wanted water to play a big part, and I think he got ignored a lot, and so that's probably where that's coming from.
No, I just meant on the character creation stuff.
You know,
Yeah,
I think once
finished writing much earlier than most people on in any of the writing steps, except for the last one. I was one of the last people on the last one, but on the other ones, I finished and was sitting for 10 minutes or so, probably, waiting for other people to finish writing concepts, which isn't a huge amount of time, but it is just kind of non-integration downtime.
Yeah, I think that would have been a little bit smoother without a 6-person group.
Coming up with ideas on the fly is pretty tough. But
That's true.
Yeah, but it is a lot like just playing the game. I mean, when you're role-playing, it's mostly improv without knowing what's going on next, so that's very much why it is like playing, even in character creation. I mean, once we finished doing the actual setting, we were basically role-playing in past tense, and that was pretty neat.
I think the problem with it, though, is that you have, when you're normally role-playing, you have one person or multiple people focusing on the thing that's at hand, whereas a 6-person group, like with, like Lee was saying, each person has to do 2 things, and that's, I don't know what the actual number is, but that's a lot of people having to pay attention to multiple things, and so you just want to write something down and then worry about what you're doing instead of actually role-playing it out, because that's going to take too long. I think with a smaller group you could actually go one by one and role-play it out, or think for a few minutes, and then when someone comes up with an idea, then you can role-play it out and continue like that. I don't know.
Well, Lee did give us a lot of opportunities to share while we were discussing, like, between, like, say, you know, Rory and I had something that was particular for just our 2 characters. Lee was really good at having us, like, kind of sharing what we're talking about and kick ideas around, or if we didn't have ideas, to include everybody else in it as a soundboard, or just to get opinions and stuff, because I mean it was everybody's story, so in the long run.
well, I had a lot more fun with it than normal character creation. It was not seamlessly like as if you were playing. That would be really difficult to do, and we'd all have to be really on spot, I think, to pull that off. But I did feel like the end result, like I was into my character and really want to play in the exact same way that you would want to feel after like the first session. But yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the other things is that's how it's laid out in the book is kind of how it went down for us, I think, which I guess was not as much as I expected. One of the things was they're saying, you know, write 1 or 2 sentences and then you can pull something from that. And that's kind of what actually happened, but fleshing it out didn't seem to... it didn't seem like the fleshing it out part was in the book. They mentioned it more than when I read the book, it seemed like they were just kind of like write 2 sentences about something that'll incorporate yourself into this background. And I think that's kind of what we did, but I don't know if they intended more discussion to go on other than that, unless I didn't read the book properly, and I don't know.
I mean, I sort of went on what felt right with having the amount of discussion and making sure that people were into their origin stories or to their their little side stories or what have you, and I wanted people to be more like I don't know, I feel like the amount of discussion and that sort of thing should just be fluid rather than sticking precisely to what's in the book. I mean, I followed their guidelines pretty their outline pretty hard, but yeah, I mean, yeah, I don't know. I tried to have it so that people seemed satisfied at the end of every phase.
The thing that I liked about the all the discussion, at least going at least a little bit public, was that I got a really good feel for all of the characters, whereas usually I'm like, okay, so-and-so is playing a ranger, so-and-so is playing a fighter, and then character descriptions, 5 of them blow past me. I'm like, gosh, I tried, but I do not remember a single one of them.
Yeah, there's a tall guy. One of them's a dwarf, so we already know what that is. And then like you're like trying to piece it all together in your head. Like I have kind of visual representations of characters from Mage, but only because we've been playing it for so long, and it took a long time for me to really like get that imagination going.
So I really liked the backgrounds, the amount of like publicness that the backgrounds were, even for things that my character would have no reason to ever know. It helps me picture it out of game a lot better.
In some ways, it reminded me a little bit of how you used to run games with just 2 people in a set to get as intros for the campaign, to get people to flesh out their characters, get to know a couple of other people, and then before the game starts. It seems kind of like that in some ways, where it was role-playing in a prequel sense.
Yeah, Jeff's idea was just pretty much the exact same thing, except it took 6 additional hours.
Yeah.
No, actually, one of the things I was really impressed by that I didn't really initially realize about the Phase Trio is that it gives you time to process all of these discrete bits that are happening to other characters or about other characters, and it makes them stick a little bit more, like those little the little story bits and the aspects and how they tie into that stuff. I felt like personally, I know like you said, I mean, I feel like I have a deeper connection with the characters mentally, just because of the way it was broken down, and of course being really open about it did help.
I think at some point Lee encouraged us to like use specifics, or like if we mentioned something, he would ask like, well, who is this, and stuff like that. So at some point, Sean and I both just started making up characters whenever we could in like backgrounds.
Yeah, I thought that was brilliant, by the way, because I didn't even think about doing that but it started happening.
Lee never called us on it, and he just sort of added them all.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different. I added way more like issues and faces, not issues specifically. There's still the 2 main issues, but like.
So if you encounter a random masochistic asshole in the city, that's my fault.
Yep, but there's all sorts of like little side characters and organizations and that sort of thing that ended up just sort of happening. And I even wrote a couple in there just as I thought of them, because I'm like, oh, that'd be a good idea. Like, I wanted to have a crazy cult of weird people, and Rory's background gave me the absolute perfect outlet for that. So
yeah,
whether he likes it or not, he's associated.
The GM gets to have some fun too, I guess.
It is really interesting as a player to write in your own villains. That's something you don't normally get to do as a player.
Yeah, Ed actually kind of wrote a villain in for you, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah, he did.
He Ed wrote in like 3 different people in this one family, and then an airship that they own, and I'm like, I had completely missed it, and then Rory brought it up, and I'm like, oh, that is really smart.
That actually had nothing to do with his character. He wrote in a father and son who were in charge of an airship that were clearly our enemies, but it weren't his enemies, they were my character's enemies in the background.
Yeah, that actually worked out pretty well. Also, he had really good names for him, too. Maximilian Sterling. Oh, that guy sounds like an asshole.
And sounds like it fits in Steampunk.
Yeah.
With the airship being the Perseverance.
Yeah.
So, as a GM, Lee, did you feel like there was anything you wanted more control of that kind of slipped away from you?
More control of?
Or something that you didn't want to go the way it did, or you didn't expect it to?
I didn't expect as many people to write origin stories with their characters. I expected more people to pull from it, like their characters had been around for a while, and then they wrote a thing about something their character had done. Like Jeff's character and Rory's character had been around for a while and just sort of wrote about a thing they did. Whereas like Sean wrote a pretty broad origin story, so did Richard, and that kind of surprised me. But it turned out all right because Richard hasn't even been around that long in the first place in a meaningful way, and Sean's character is sort of defined by this one goal, this one revenge thing.
Plus, he wanders a lot too.
Yeah.
So.
And you wrote Evo. You wrote a pretty specific situation too, and I kind of like those. But the other ones worked out fine in the end, I think.
I think it should be mentioned too that other than the fact that Lee said, I kind of want to play a steampunk game, I don't really think you really pushed us to do anything else. You basically sat there and let us dictate the setting. I can't remember. Is there something that you might have pushed for? Because I don't think you did.
Yeah, I wanted it to be on Earth.
Yeah, it seemed like you pushed against space.
Pretty hard, yep.
He was hemming and hawing about being on space. So
yeah.
We let him have that one thing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it definitely
I didn't want to run a
would've
space
been
game. Who knew?
Space Western. I don't think most of us did. That's why it didn't happen.
So I got a question for you. Like I think there was, especially like Ed and Sean, there was a lot of voice for us having issues, us having problems to tackle.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what were you gonna do if the players set up a position where everything was easy, like there wasn't a lot of issues, or if the players did try to set up a space western, like what was your plan there?
Oh boy, I will be honest and say that I did not have a plan for that. I guess in hindsight, if that had happened, or if it had been a space western, I could have probably rolled with it in the end. But
I don't think anybody really wanted to play a space western.
if the players had made it easier for themselves, like you guys presented yourselves with a lot of issues, and that made me happy that you wanted to have. It felt like people wanted to have some sort of stake in their future, even if it's shitty. But like, if people hadn't, I think I would have pushed for more villainy, more NPCs from the get-go. Like you guys, we came up with Hammy, Graham Wellington, and one friendly NPC. But other than that, like maybe up to the scope a little bit to try to make some broader or antagonists for the group. If they had been like on the top of the food chain. Like, oh, we're the best people on Earth. Oh, well, there's aliens and Cthulhu and I don't know. But like, I feel like you can always go, like, there's always somebody who's a little bit better. Or at least just as much of an asshole as you are. That's probably the direction I would have gone with that in hindsight. I did not have a plan for that, though. That brings up an interesting point.
But what if they didn't want that as a type of thing? Like, their goal was to, I don't know, control the little worlds that they want going on below them. Maybe
we're talking about playing
like,
Kingmaker.
Yeah, this is a very different kind of game.
You know, and we wanted to control all of the people. Maybe we're the rich people in our city.
I think in that sort of situation, it would have, if people didn't want to go higher, then I would have gone lower, like Rebellion style, and you would have just been literally in the opposite end of it. Like if the people below had come up with some sort of crazy new technology or discovered something that might allow them to rebel against the upper class citizens, that sort of thing.
I'm just glad it didn't happen. I was just wondering, like, what happens in a Fate game when the players end up making a game you don't want to run anymore? Like,
I think at that point, you sort of take a step back and ask yourself and the players if you've come up with something that's worth playing, which I think is a nuke it from orbit solution. But at the same time, I mean, if you get there, then you probably should.
Another thing
Well,
you could possibly do is if it's a game you don't want to run, but somebody else might want to run it in the group.
That's true.
I mean, you can write yourself into as a character at that point pretty easily, since it's kind of the group creation, and that's even before the characters are formed.
I'm
Yeah.
going to do that now. I'm going to run a Fate game that is based on werewolves specifically, and then I'm going to say, no, I don't want to run this. Someone else has it.
And then you're going to make a werewolf.
And then I do my werewolf
you're
game.
just gonna
Well,
bait
it's-
people.
Well, it's like if you say, I'm going to run a werewolf game, and everybody says, no, we're going to play robots.
Yeah, definitely. I will play a robot game, but someone else has to run
And
it.
he's like, robots
I
are
don't really
so
feel like-
cool, I could run that. And Evo's like,
I don't
"Alright."
really feel like playing a robot game, so
Yeah, in the all robot game, you'd be the guy playing
You'll
with
be
werewolf.
You'll be the human.
He'd be the human sex bot in the all robot game.
The
the human
sex
slave.
So something I
Go-
was surprised by, or I guess not super surprised by, but a little, I don't know. I thought it was interesting that we went with no extras to speak of. I sort of pointed out that if people, since there are already robotics and augmented people in the game because of Richard and Sean and Jeff's finagling, Richard because of robots and Sean and Jeff because they had a cyborg guy, and you guys were talking about, I don't know, or maybe it was just Sean. But I was like, well, if people want to have like cyborg enhancements or something, those can probably just be a stunt, and then that's that. That's about as far as the extras went.
Well, it's pretty cool because, like, every once in a while a player would have, like, this broad sweeping statement. Like, I think it was Sean who at some point said, so everyone's okay with no magic, right? Or was that Richard?
I think I said that.
I think that was Richard.
I said I didn't want to play with magic, but I did want to play with technology that we couldn't explain.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
we eventually compromised on, probably no magic, but, like, sci stuff might be cool, or, like, crazy tech and stuff like that, and everyone seemed cool with that. So, like, there was this overall agreement or sort of movement away from, like, superpower type game,
Yeah.
which I think cut out a lot of extras.
Yeah, it's weird that we're playing a steampunk game without psychics or occultism specifically, like as in magic.
But robots
That is
Which
true. We do have robots.
is strange for steampunk by a fair margin.
Yep. I would say it's pretty knee deep in super science. I'd say Richard
Just
is
let it
probably a
happen.
little bit more gears and steam than electrodes and such.
Just
But
Yeah.
saying, if you see a robot running around and it looks like a steampunk robot with, like, gears and crap, it doesn't have to be high tech. I mean, none of that technology works by any sort of logic.
that is
I'm
true.
not going to tell you guys what's inside makes me work, but if you guys want to explore around and find it, that's up to you.
All I know is that sometimes when you're standing a little bit too close to him, he smells of oil and sounds like gears. And I'm like, that is not sexy. That is
All
weird.
I know is I am always warm and moist, and that is all that matters.
Oh.
Because you're steam powered.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's right. Yeah, it was a steam joke.
Yeah, we had a fairly lengthy discussion about where the steam comes out, and I'm just not going to go there. I just wanted you to know that that happened.
Out of your ears.
It was in the illustration.
Yeah, well, again, that illustration was something else. It was a collaborative illustration, even. We worked together on that monstrosity
True.
that we made.
We collaborated on that as well.
If I could actually ask a question back at character creation, how did other people find going from the joint stories to an aspect to work? Did you feel like you had kind of aspect ideas for your character that you tried to work in, or did you try to make the connection into a new aspect?
I did both.
One of them I had right away. that I had thought of initially when I was just walking with Lee to go get some food earlier in the day. I was like, oh, if I end up making this character, I have a really cool idea for it. And then I was like, well, that's a big thing that drives my character, so I'm going to put that in. But then and that was as far as I had. And then so that was my own story, and I think that's acceptable. But then the other two, I kind of went off of what the actual story was. The third one, I don't like actually, which was, I guess, a negative of it. So I'm gonna have to go through and I think of something else for it. But seems a little.
Since I had a character concept that I really wanted to use, I kind of already had a bunch of ideas for either stunts or aspects, and I had them all listed out, and I figured if I saw an opening, and like for instance, like Rory got one from me that was like the least provocative, I think, because I didn't want to put his character through the put him through the sex mess, and but you know, like everybody else, I could kind of do whatever I wanted. So, or at least it would fit to do whatever I wanted. So I just wanted it to be organic. So I had a bunch of stuff that I thought would be cool, and I just picked the things that seemed like it would fit the best with the characters that I had to interact with.
Yeah, I had one aspect that I was really gunning for fitting into one of the stories, and then I actually couldn't think of a couple more aspects that I really even wanted, so I was hoping that the stories would actually do their job and help flesh out things I hadn't thought about the character. And it seemed to kind of work. Yeah.
What about you, Rory?
I went in without any ideas at all and tried to make all these stories come up with ideas, and that's why the last one took so long for me to come up with, is I was drawing a complete blank on not doing an aspect I'd already done, basically. All of the aspects I was thinking of were just repetitions of ones I had taken for the other stories. And so I think going into it with a little bit more concreteness would have actually been useful.
Hey, I got a question that kind of goes back to the last podcast we did. I think it was Ed that had expressed concern over people trying to get aspects that were like so good, like right off the bat, that they wouldn't want to change them because it like really, you know, takes care of all the little things that they'd want to do with their fate points. Does anybody feel like their character is set, or that they have certain go-to aspects that are just like really powerful that they're going to be able to lean on all the time?
No, I wanted aspects that were both. I mean, it depends on how you want to play, but I wanted aspects that were both good and bad for my character, which might be what you're going for, but I think that's something that can go both ways and isn't just all positives for your character. I don't know what that would be, really.
I don't know, probably aspects that cover all the bases, you know, like, oh, I want something that can get me out of a jam financially, and maybe something that, you know, like if I, you know, need to do a bunch of my skills, this how to do it.
Yeah, but does anyone feel like they have any aspects they can see themselves never changing? Or if they have a lot of those aspects?
I mean, I do, but not in a way that I think is unbalanced. I think it's self-balancing for at least all of mine. Like, he has an aspect where he is strong and stupid, whereas I will probably use that constantly if I'm in some sort of physical confrontation, like attacking or jumping or anything like that, but then Lee can use the stupid part of it just as constantly as he wants.
Yeah.
So it kind of balances out, I think.
One of my aspects, I'm actually not sure how it's going to be used, which is the aspect I took with Jeff. I specifically put an aspect for our characters together.
Yeah.
I like those sorts of things. I think the specific use aspects are pretty cool. Like
I thought that was interesting, and I wanted to roll with it just to see how that plays out, because I don't know how that will play out.
That's actually partially why I wanted to do that.
I'm excited to try to muck with it. I think one of the things that I want is to. Sorry, go on.
I was just like, so Lee is going to compel Rory to be in a situation where he's protected by me? I'm very interested to see what Lee does with that. Yeah.
Well, it's mutual. Remember, you're physically protecting me. I'm protecting you from things you wouldn't understand.
Yeah, he can compel it because you're not there to protect him, too. I mean...
So it's supposed to be that either one of us could compel the other person as well.
Yeah.
But, like, I feel like one of the things that's the most challenging, at least, like, going into the actual play, is, like, coming up with meaningful enough situations that people might question their aspects. Like, I always feel like that sort of sideways progression, even though you're not really specifically getting anything out of it, can be really meaningful, and I want that to happen. Like, I want things to either go really well or go really poorly for people one way or another. I'm hoping someone takes one of the extreme consequences or whatever and gets like a freaking all sorts of crazy, terrible aspect and stuff from that.
What is an extreme consequence?
If you take a consequence that if you have absolutely no other choice, you can take a consequence that replaces one of your aspects, one of your permanent aspects, and it will stick with you for basically an entire like story arc you just cannot get rid of.
Or longer.
Or longer, yes. It could be longer, like if you had a leg cut off and you had a peg leg. Like that could be, that could be a real problem for a long, long time.
Or forever?
Well, I mean, what if they cryogenically freeze you and in the future they give you a new leg,
Or if you get a cyborg
Or if you were
leg.
playing an Amber game and your leg grows back in a number of like 15 years.
Or you just get used to the peg leg.
There you go. You get used enough to the peg leg that it doesn't hamper your movement anymore. But like, yeah, there's a lot of, I think, interesting and compelling ways to get people to change their aspects. And I'm interested to see who's willing to give up what to note meaningful change in their character over time. I think that seems really compelling to me as a GM, like seeing where people go. Because there's only 5 aspects in this. Like, we're used to playing with, what, 10?
Yeah.
A huge amount, so it wasn't so bad just giving up one. I'd be like, yeah, I can get rid of that. I have something else cool that's going on. But like in this, like it's meaningful when you drop an aspect for another one.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the weird things about the system itself is that at first glance, when you're just kind of looking it over, it looks so simple that you almost figure, well, I don't need to really know anything about this. But there are a lot of things like extreme consequences that actually make the game much more interesting when you're actually playing it. And I think it's important to actually know that those things are there so that you aren't not doing them during the game. Because that takes a lot of fun, I think, personally. But there's a lot of things that we didn't do in Jeff's Mage game that had some sort of that was like related to Fate, but I don't really remember what they were right now. But there are a lot of things that we didn't. Oh, compelling other people's aspects. We never do.
Yeah, and we don't know most of the other people's aspects in that game.
To be fair, we don't really know everybody else's aspects like we do now.
Well, we had them on. I guess we don't know all the aspects, but we had all the high concepts and troubles, and they're still up, or I guess they're not up anymore, but they were up for a while, and no one ever compelled anything else's.
Well, like, I don't remember everybody's. Like, I remember Ed has Fearless Little Shit. For some reason, that one always is going to ring out. And I think Rory had, like, Right Time, Wrong Fate, or maybe I got that backwards. But there's I just want to remember a couple about people. We didn't make the characters together as I don't know, collaboratively as we did with this game. so it's a little harder for me to keep track of everybody's aspects, whereas I know a lot more about the characters this time around.
That game's a lot more secretive and has a lot more personal agendas in it as well. So
That
it's
is
different
true.
game style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
plus with more aspects, people's aspects don't get pinged quite as often, so you don't get the constant reminder that they're there. Whereas with 5 aspects, like people's aspects are going to get pinged a lot. And I hope the fate point economy is really fluid.
I don't think that was Jeff's intent, unless he tells me I'm incorrect. I think that we wanted to be doing that, and we wanted to know what other people had for their characters. That's not how it started out, because I don't think we started in Fate, did we? No.
We did. We started
we
with
did.
aspects. It's kind of a holdover. Like usually there's a lot of secretive stuff going on in those sorts of games, and it's just kind of the default way we've played. And I never mentioned specifically to try and change, because it is a pretty big mindset change.
Yeah.
well, and traditionally, as that game continued, it was really more a between the player and the GM to have aspects get pinged for stuff. So
But
I think
it's-
we might have just got used to that.
Is that just because we didn't do it? Because we were aware of the fact of doing it. I mean, that we could do it, or at least I was, because Jeff had
I never felt pressured
referenced it.
to.
I never really thought about it.
Yeah, I didn't. It didn't really occur to me. Maybe it's because in Mage there was a lot of other stuff going on. I didn't have the aspects in front of me. Like in Fate, they talk a lot of the time in their examples about having what do you call them, like cards out for the aspects, for the scene aspects, and cards out for the player aspects, and that sort of thing. And we didn't have that. And I'd like to get something rolling for that somewhere in some shared document or something like that, just because I want it to be more like there's not a huge amount of secrets in this. The setting is pretty you guys against the world, or against a lot of other people anyway. And I want to have that, I want people to be aware that they're able to ping other people's aspects. They're able to, get their hands dirty with regards to the way other people are handling things, or other people get handled, depending on who's doing handling, I guess.
I just thought of something, but it might be the lack of aspects that might help that happen, because I was thinking about it just now, and in the last or second last, I think it was the last session that we did for Mage, there was a scene where my character was going to do something that may actually harm another character in the group, and it was Rory, and I think Rory used one of his own aspects to try to stop it, because he's got a bunch of them, so one of them could have applied, but he could have used one of my own aspects to stop it, because I'm supposed to be protecting the group.
To offer you the fate point.
Right, and so it could have went that way. Instead, I think he offered the fate point to Jeff, but it's mostly because we have so many aspects that we can use for so many different situations. We didn't really have to get creative like that, but in this game we're going to have such a smaller group of things to work with that we might want to get creative and use other people's aspects to get things done, rather than always trying to think of the way that we can use ours. So maybe that'll...
The secretive nature, I think, is also still a big part of it. For example, if you look at another game that runs based off of storytelling a lot, the Amber game that I've been running, I think that would actually be very hard to convert into Fate, simply because the characters don't know the other people's secrets. So it'd be very hard to
the
compel
fun of
other
it.
aspects.
I think
Would be not knowing the other characters.
player
rather
conflict
than,
is okay in Fate. Actual PvP, real PvP, is not going to work out, because people are going to know too much information.
Yeah.
Right, and I think that's why it'd be hard for Amber.
Yeah.
I wonder, Lee, if there's a situation like that, is that something that they talk about in the book?
When players fight players?
Yeah.
Not specifically that I recall. There might be something in there, but I don't remember it specifically.
Because that sounds like the sort of thing that if I was in your position, I would almost want to, not allow either people to use fates against each other, because they know all the inner secrets outside of the game.
I mean, if you're going to ping someone else's aspect, you still have to spend a fate point on it.
That's also kind of depends on how well people are and aren't working together. Like if two players want to get into a fight because they think it's really cool and story appropriate, they could duke it out both cooperatively and have it be cool, and either both walk away, or if one person actually thinks it's an appropriate death for their character, fine. But like they could work together and make a really cool scene out of that. If the players out of game are like invested in actually like the concept of winning, that's not going to work.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to figure out. Because if they're just going to leverage the information that they know outside of the game to kill another player off because they're, I mean, we have to expect that there's going to be people like that. Not in our game, but except for Ed.
I think in any Fate game, you're going to have to, if that sort of thing is going to happen, people have to be, and I think in general, a lot of Fate is about crafting the better story for everybody involved than it is about winning. It's about telling a story that people want to play, that they want to, actively participate in. And like if there's going to be a player conflict or something like that, it should be for a reason that people are invested in story-wise, if it's going to happen.
I almost wonder if that makes Fate a much tougher game to play in a pickup group.
You have
since you'll have too many wild cards.
Faith that your people aren't going to be dicks. Like,
there's a lot of trust in Fate, I think.
There's a lot of compromise.
In a pickup group, I would want some rules.
Yeah.
In Fate, I want to play with people I trust and people I know are, acting for everyone's best interest and not just their own. Well, I think that's probably about a fine time to call it. I realize I forgot to do a roll call at the beginning. My name is Lee.
I'm Ebo.
I'm Jeff.
I'm Richard.
And I'm Rory.
It's a little late for that, but there you go. Better late than never, I say.
Phrase it like a question.
Anyway, yeah, I think that's probably about all for me. I hope it's about all for the rest of you. I shouldn't be asking questions. I'm making decisions. That's the end of it.
That's it.
All right.
Play us out, Jeff.
Yeah, visit our website at houserule.com. Read awesome blog posts. Listen to podcasts. Yeah.
Watch us play.
Yes. Watch the blog. Later.
Bye.
Bye.